I used to think I was managing, not thriving, not winning, just managing. Rent on the 5th, car payment on the 15th, groceries whenever the fridge started looking hollow. I kept the coffee machine running, paid for streaming, and told myself that was enough. I was 28, living alone in a small rental duplex outside Dayton, Ohio. Nothing remarkable, but it was mine. Most evenings, I came home tired from the packaging warehouse, stacked boxes, ran spreadsheets, made dumb jokes in the break room with coworkers I barely liked but somehow missed on weekends. My life was average, forgettable, normal, and I took quiet pride in that. I didn't need help. I didn't ask for favors. Then came the stock tip. The fall. "This startup's going to blow up," said Jared from work, showing me some flashy website on his phone during lunch. He'd made $1,200 the month before. His eyes were bright with the particular confidence of someone who got lucky once. I had $3,800 in savings. I put half in. Just enough to double if it went well. Dumb enough to burn if it didn't. Then came the side hustle. I'd been buying cheap electronics in bulk to resell online. A little operation I was quietly proud of. This time I overextended. My supplier vanished. The boxes never arrived. The money never came back. And then, like fate had been waiting patiently for exactly the right moment, came the car accident. Late night. Raining. I was tired. I turned left too fast and clipped a pole. No one else involved, just me and a car that folded like a cheap lawn chair. I limped home in a rideshare, soaked and shaking, telling myself it was fixable. Insurance disagreed. Between coverage gaps, deductibles, and missed payments, they gave me nothing. The mechanic quoted me a number so high I actually laughed, and then sat in my driveway and cried. Debt started blooming like mold after that. Savings gone. The credit card maxed. Rent overdue. I missed one car payment, then two. I stopped opening the mailbox because it only delivered panic. One night I sat on the carpet with all the lights off, bills spread around me like a hand of cards I didn't know how to play. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't breathe. I'd built my life like a card house on a windy windowsill. One gust and everything scattered. The light on the hill. That was the night I first noticed her light. The mansion up the hill. Always quiet. Always perfect. Victoria Hale's house. I knew her by name, not by conversation. I delivered a misaddressed package to her once. She'd answered the door in a silk robe and pearls like it was a photo shoot. That night, warm yellow light spilled from every window, while the rest of the street sat dark. I remember thinking, she probably has someone to sort her bills. Someone to clean her floors. Someone to pour her tea. That was the last night I believed my life was still mine to steer. The offer. I'd passed her house 100 times. Never once imagined I'd step inside. It sat like a monument above the neighborhood. 3 stories of stone with iron gates, ivy climbing arched windows, and a front lawn that always looked freshly swept. Victoria Hale was the kind of woman who wore heels to check the mail. Always in dark tailored dresses. Always moving with the stillness of someone who never rushed. Then one morning, as I was dragging a torn trash bag to the curb, same hoodie I'd worn 3 days in a row, walking with my eyes down, she stepped through her front gate. "You've lost weight," she said. Not concern. More like observation. I blinked at her. "You haven't been sleeping," she added. "And your mail has been sitting out for 4 days." She looked at me the way a doctor looks at a patient who's pretending they're fine. 3 days later, I hit my lowest point. I'd just gotten off the phone with the bank. Final notice. I sat in the stairwell outside my apartment, head in my hands, heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. Eyes bloodshot. Shirt stained. Breathing too hard. The soft sound of heels stopped at the edge of my vision. "Come inside," Victoria said quietly. "You need tea." I don't know why I followed her. Maybe it was the voice, calm, unshaken, the kind that cuts through panic like a needle. Maybe I just couldn't bear to be alone with myself for another minute. The inside of her mansion was something else entirely. Every surface gleamed. Soft classical music played from somewhere barely audible. The kitchen was all marble and chrome, Not a single dish out of place. She poured tea like it was a ceremony. Then she asked the one question I had no strength to lie about. How bad is it, Ethan? I didn't know how she knew my name. I didn't care. I just told her everything, the investment, the car, the debt, the bills I'd stopped opening. I talked until my voice cracked. And then I sat there, ashamed of every decision I'd ever made. She didn't flinch, didn't pity me. When I finally stopped speaking, she reached for her teacup, stirred once, and looked at me with eyes that didn't blink. What if I told you, she said, I could make all of this disappear? The contract. A live-in housekeeper. The words floated out of her mouth like they belonged in another century. I waited for a smirk, a punchline, something that would soften it. Victoria Hale just sipped her tea. I'm serious, Ethan. 1 year. Full-time. In exchange, I will settle your debts. Every last cent. No strings beyond the terms I'm about to explain. She laid it out like a business transaction. Room and board included. Weekly allowance, modest but steady. Debt forgiveness built in, pending full completion. Meals prepared, linens pressed, floors cleaned. Professional standards at all times. You want me to be your butler? I want a housekeeper, she said. And the role has a uniform. She walked to the end of the marble counter and returned with a cream-colored folder. Her name embossed in the corner. Inside, a legal contract. I skimmed it with hands I was trying to hold steady. And then one clause stopped me cold. During all active duty hours, the housekeeper shall be attired in the traditional domestic uniform provided by Ms. Hale. This includes all associated garments required for proper appearance and presentation. I looked up. You mean like an actual maid uniform? Tailored to you. Proper, clean, traditional. You'll be trained in posture, presentation, and etiquette. I expect you to look the part. I'm not doing some role-play thing if that's what this is. I'm not asking you to perform, she said, her voice as measured as her countertop. I'm offering you a way out. Structure. Discipline. Grace. In return, you restore this house to perfection, and I restore your life. I pushed the folder back. Face burning. Why me? She didn't hesitate. Because you're desperate enough not to walk away. That rattled me most. Because she was right. I stormed out that day, folder untouched. But that night, I laid the contract on the floor and surrounded it with my final notices. Rent lapsed. Car being repossessed. Card declined buying groceries. My life hadn't been collapsing. It had already collapsed. I was just the last one to admit it. At 2:12 a.m., with no money and no answers, I signed. Not because I believed in it. Because I'd run out of things to believe in. The dressing room. Victoria led me down a quiet hallway to a small room with pale blue walls and white tiled floors. It smelled faintly of lavender and starch. This is your dressing room. Cleanliness is expected. Order is non-negotiable. A bench. A full-length mirror. A garment bag hanging from a hook on the wall. A small wooden drawer unit labeled in delicate script. You'll begin today. Shower. Shave thoroughly from the neck down. Change into what's inside. I'll expect you upstairs in 40 minutes. She left. The room was silent except for the sound of my own pulse. I reached for the garment bag and unzipped it slowly. A traditional maid-style uniform. Jet black with delicate white trim. The bodice fitted and tailored. The skirt flared just past the knee with soft pleats that gave it a gentle, swishing silhouette. A crisp white apron folded over the hanger. White gloves tucked into a side pocket. A small lace-trimmed cap. I stared at it. The word costume formed in my mind, and then died before it finished forming. Because nothing about this looked like a costume. It looked precise. Intentional. Real. The drawers held more. Smooth peach-tinted undergarments. A structured support piece. Stockings still folded in tissue paper. A pair of low black heels, polished so clean I could see my reflection in the toes. I sat on the bench for a long moment. Then I stood, undressed, and stepped into the shower. The hot water steamed the mirror. I shaved everything, chest, arms, legs, stomach. It felt ritualistic, like I was peeling away more than just hair. Putting on the uniform was a strange choreography. The undergarments were snug, but not uncomfortable. The stockings hugged my legs like a second skin. The dress zipped at the back and fit, properly, deliberately, in ways that clothing had never fit me before. Tight at the waist. Feminine at the hips. When I adjusted the apron, the skirt swished around me, light and oddly graceful. The heels changed my posture instantly, made me stand straighter, shifted my balance. Then came the mirror. I expected to feel like a joke. I didn't. I looked like someone I almost recognized. Not a man pretending to be something else. Someone in between. Someone in the middle of being constructed into a new shape. My face was flushed. My arms smooth. My posture changed completely. The apron tied snugly at the back, the collar buttoned high. I didn't look powerful. I looked composed. Trained. Neat. And somewhere deep inside the embarrassment, something else. A quiet stillness I hadn't felt in months. I picked up the gloves. Turned toward the door. This was day one. Marissa. The next morning, Victoria's knock came sharp at 7. Meet me in the salon. You'll begin training today. Training. I'd expected cleaning. Mopping floors, scrubbing tiles, folding towels. I hadn't expected the woman standing in the center of the salon. Tall, dressed entirely in black, arms crossed, a silver case at her feet, and a stare like polished glass. This is Marissa, Victoria said. Your etiquette coach and presentation consultant. You will listen, you will obey, and you will thank her. Marissa looked me over for a full 10 seconds without speaking. Apron too loose. Waist needs to be cinched. Skirt is sitting flat. It should flare. You're slouching. Chin down. Eyes evasive. She stepped forward. Let's begin. Before I could react, she was pulling the apron strings tighter, adding small pins to adjust the skirt's fall, and guiding my shoulders back with firm hands. She lifted my chin with the tip of one finger. There. Already better. You are here to serve with grace, not to shuffle like a defeated man. I clenched my jaw. Every part of this felt humiliating, infantilizing, but I didn't protest. I couldn't afford to. Then came the makeup. Marissa opened her silver case and turned my face toward the light without asking permission. Foundation. A hint of blush. Light mascara. Brows softened. Lip balm with the faintest tint. She didn't make me look like a woman. She made me look softer. More refined. Like something carefully arranged that wasn't meant to be touched. Then she pulled out the wig. Shoulder length. Rich chestnut brown with subtle waves. Styled to stay behind the ears and out of the eyes. She secured it with practiced hands and stepped back. I looked in the mirror and froze. It wasn't just a man in a uniform anymore. It was her, the housekeeper. Something quieter. Something meeker. Something that looked as though it had always belonged in this house. Don't look away, Marissa said quietly. Get used to the reflection. This is who you are when you're working. And soon it will be second nature. The days that followed. The rest of that first day blurred into motion. How to make a bed so tight you could bounce a coin on it. How to fold napkins into perfect triangles. How to align silverware precisely 1 inch from the table's edge. How to polish a wine glass without leaving the faintest breath mark. I was corrected constantly. Posture. Wrist too loose. You walked like a man just now. Try again. I hated Marissa's voice. Not because she was cruel, but because she was always right. By evening, I was exhausted in a way that went deeper than muscle. My cheeks ached from holding composure. My feet throbbed in the low heels. My body felt like it no longer belonged to me, but to her standards. I collapsed onto the edge of the twin bed in the staff quarters, still in uniform, still shaved, still breathing like someone being watched. I told myself I'd just lie down for a moment. I was asleep before I could untie my apron. And when I woke the next morning, something had shifted. I stood up, tied my apron tighter, adjusted my skirt, walked with my chin gently lifted. Without thinking about it, The steps began to flow together the way ordinary things do, like brushing your teeth, like tying your shoes. The undergarments, the skirt, the bodice zipped shut, the apron tied, gloves on, wig secured, light makeup applied with quick, practiced hands. The uniform no longer felt like something I was putting on. It felt like something I was returning to. The routine becomes real. Each morning began the same way.
Shower. Shave.
Light moisturizer. Then the smooth undergarments. The structured piece that reshaped my frame. Stockings clipped into place. Heels buckled. Dress zipped. Apron tied. Gloves on. Wig styled into its soft wave. Makeup applied. Foundation. Touch of color. Something to quiet the sharpness. The discomfort had dulled. The tightness at the waist, the swish of the skirt, the pull of the stockings, none of it shocked me anymore. If anything, I felt still when I was dressed. Like the version of me in the mirror was the only one holding everything together. My movements became smaller, quieter. I stepped lightly.
Spoke gently.
Kept my hands folded or moving with purpose. I learned how to kneel gracefully, to scrub a floor without showing too much leg. How to balance a tea tray with one hand and hold a door with the other. How to clean without leaving a trace of effort behind. Victoria noticed. She didn't shower me with compliments, but when she did speak, the words landed somewhere deep. You look very presentable today, Ethan. That tray was handled gracefully. I didn't hear a single step on the stairs. Excellent. I would nod quietly, lips pressed together, trying not to show how much that approval meant. But inside something bloomed every time she noticed. One afternoon I caught myself in the hallway mirror, carrying a tray, walking heel to toe in perfect rhythm. The reflection wore a crisp black uniform, white apron tied with care, brown wig resting just above the shoulders. Standing upright.
Calm. Polished.
Like she had always been the maid of this mansion. It startled me, because I didn't flinch. Didn't smirk or roll my eyes or whisper, "What am I doing?" I just looked and thought quietly, she looks ready for service. That night, back in my quarters, I pulled the wig off slowly, wiped away the makeup with careful fingers. My own face reappeared, raw and bare. But lying in bed, sheets tucked tight the way I'd been trained, I found myself already thinking about the morning ritual. Not with dread. With something that frightened me considerably more. Something like comfort.
Cal.
It was a warm Tuesday. Quiet. Uneventful. I was in the garden carrying a basket of freshly laundered linens, one gloved hand holding the hem of my skirt against the breeze. The sun hit the white apron in a way that made it shimmer. I remember feeling neat. Tidy. Controlled. Then I heard my name. Not Ethan, the housekeeper. Not excuse me. Just Ethan. That voice didn't belong in this world. It belonged back in the warehouse. In the break room. In my old life. I turned slowly.
Kyle.
Old coworker. Same hoodie he always wore. Same lopsided smile. Now replaced by a furrowed brow, like he wasn't entirely sure what he was seeing was real. What he was seeing was me. Uniform pressed. Apron tied. Wig flawless. Light makeup. Stockings. Low heels. Linen basket in hand. I dropped the basket. Heat surged up my neck, so fast it made my ears ring. Panic bloomed behind my ribs. Wild. Acidic. Impossible to contain. My legs wanted to bolt. My feet were rooted to the cobblestone. Is that Wade? Is that really you? Before I could stammer out a single word, heels behind me.
Calm.
Measured. Deliberate. Victoria swept past me with silent authority, placing herself between us, as though nothing were out of the ordinary. "Good afternoon," she said to Kyle, her tone cool and polite. "Can I help you?" "Sorry, I used to work with Ethan. I was just passing through and saw." He trailed off, eyes flicking toward me again. Victoria placed a gentle hand on my shoulder.
Yes.
"Ethan works here now. He is my housekeeper." Her voice was civilized and completely final. "If you'd like to leave a message, I'm happy to pass it along." Kyle stood a beat too long, then laughed awkwardly.
"No, sorry.
Didn't mean to interrupt. Just surprised, I guess. Victoria gave the faintest smile. She turned, motioned gently for me to follow. We walked back into the house. Neither of us said anything until the door closed behind us. She didn't scold, didn't ask if I was okay. She simply picked up the fallen basket, placed it back in my hands, and said, "Chin up, shoulders back. You still have work to do." The night, I couldn't sleep. Alone in my quarters that night, I curled on the edge of the bed and shook. I was certain it was over. That Kyle had already told everyone. That photos existed, that texts were flying through group chats. I didn't want to imagine. I lay awake composing explanations I'd never get to give. But the next morning, nothing happened. No calls. No messages. No humiliation arriving from the outside world. The silence held. And somewhere inside that silence, a realization crept over me, slow and confusing and oddly painful. That world. The one with Kyle, with the warehouse, with the smell of grease and bad coffee, and a hoodie worn 3 days running. It felt distant now. Faded. Almost unreal. World, the mansion, the uniform, the structure, the softness, had started to feel more real than anything I'd had before. Refinement. Somewhere between the 4th week and the 3rd month, I stopped waiting for orders. I began anticipating them. I adjusted the dining room centerpiece without being asked. Noticed when Victoria's tea had cooled and refreshed it before she looked up. Memorized which days she liked to read in the sunroom and when she preferred the windows open just an inch. When I heard footsteps in the hallway, I no longer flinched. I simply straightened my posture, checked my reflection in the silver tray, and kept moving. Marissa noticed. "This is no longer a role you're playing," she said one morning, brushing powder across my cheek. "This is you, here in this house. Let's refine it." She replaced my wig with a better one, softer quality, chestnut waves that curled gently at the ends and framed my face with natural elegance. She adjusted the part to soften my jawline, added small pearl drop earrings. "Tasteful," she said quietly. Quietly feminine. My makeup became slightly more defined, a touch of blush, clearer brows, a soft lip tint. Nothing dramatic, just enough to suggest I had always been this way. My hands were trimmed, buffed, moisturized daily. My voice had softened, not in pitch, but in rhythm. Measured. Careful. My steps were lighter. Even my breathing had slowed. It all came together the night Victoria hosted a small gathering. 6 people. Older. Elegant. The kind of quiet wealth that doesn't need to announce itself. I moved between them with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, careful on the marble, mindful in the velvet rooms. Then I heard Victoria say it. "This is my housekeeper." Not former tenant. Not contracted help. Not a young man paying off a debt. My housekeeper. Like it was the most natural truth in the world. Heads turned. No gasps. No awkward pauses. Just soft nods of approval. One woman smiled warmly. A man asked politely for more olives. They didn't see Ethan in crisis. They saw a housekeeper in uniform, apron crisp, wig perfect, earrings subtle, tray steady. And they simply accepted it. Later, alone in my quarters, I stood before the mirror for a long time. I didn't look like a man in disguise. I didn't look like someone trying to fool anyone. I looked like someone who had been trained, refined. Someone who had slowly, quietly, without registering the exact moment it happened, become the pretty maid of the mansion on the hill. That realization hurt and soothed me at the same time. The end of the contract. The call came one early evening as I was setting out Victoria's tea. "Ethan, please join me in the study when you're finished." I smoothed my apron, brushed a stray thread from my sleeve, and climbed the grand staircase without a sound. Victoria sat behind her desk, the fireplace casting amber light across her expression. She gestured for me to sit, not with command, but something that almost felt gentle. She turned a folder toward me. "These are the documents confirming final payment. Your debts are cleared. Every one of them." I looked at the paper. My name. My account numbers. Balance 0. It should have felt like a curtain parting, like breathing after being underwater. It felt like the floor dropped an inch beneath my feet. "You've done well here," she said. "The contract ends next week. You'll be free to go. Or to stay if you choose. But the obligation is fulfilled." The choice. That night, I pulled the old duffel bag from under the bed. Inside were scraps of the man I used to be. Jeans with frayed knees. A faded concert t-shirt. A flannel that once felt like home. This. I laid them out on the bed and stared at them. Then slowly I undressed. Removed the uniform piece by piece. Peeled off the wig. Washed away the makeup until my real face, my old face, looked back from the mirror.
Pale. Bare.
Unfamiliar. I stepped into the jeans. They sagged. They felt rough. Unyielding. The waist gaped. The t-shirt clung wrong. The mirror showed someone I should have recognized and didn't. It was like watching an actor who had forgotten every line. I stood there for a long time, caught between who I had been and who I had been shaped into. And then, without planning it, without deciding it, I undressed again. Folded the old clothes. And laid out my uniform for the morning. Apron. Undergarments. Wig resting on its stand. Earrings on the tray. It wasn't the contract. It wasn't compulsion. It was comfort. The morning of the final day. The last day arrived without ceremony. Victoria's voice drifted through the corridor, soft, unhurried. "Ethan, may I speak with you?" I followed her to the study. Apron crisp. Skirt swaying gently. Hands folded in front of me the way I'd been trained. On her desk sat a single white envelope. "No hidden clauses," she said simply. "Your debt is cleared. The contract has ended. If you wish, I'll arrange a reference. You've served this house well." I nodded.
Tried to speak.
My voice came out smaller than usual. Victoria leaned back. Studied me. "You're free to pack your things and go today, if that's what you want." I returned to my quarters. On the bench, 2 sets of clothes. The old me, folded into a worn duffel.
Jeans.
Faded t-shirt. Scuffed warehouse sneakers. And next to it, hanging on the hook like it had every morning for months, the uniform.
Pressed.
Ready. Waiting. I reached for the jeans first. They didn't fit. Not physically, they zipped, they buttoned. But they felt wrong in a way that had nothing to do with size. Heavy.
Coarse.
Like borrowing clothes from a past version of myself I no longer knew how to inhabit. I peeled them off slowly. Then my hands moved without instruction. Reached for the undergarments. Smoothed the fabric. Stepped into the skirt. Zipped the bodice. Tied the apron just right. When I stood before the mirror, wig styled, earrings in place, skirt flaring softly with each breath, I didn't see a debt or a deal or a broken man in someone else's house. I saw her, the housekeeper, the quiet figure who had found grace in repetition, calm in structure, dignity in softness. I walked back to the study. Victoria looked up from her desk. I stood in the doorway for a moment and then stepped inside. "I know the contract is over," I said quietly. "I know I'm free." She waited. But somewhere in the middle of all of this, the shaving, the dressing, the cleaning, the correcting, I stopped being just a man trying to fix a mess. I swallowed. I became someone who needs this. The structure, the stillness, the softness, the care. I paused. I don't know what that says about me. But Victoria raised one hand gently, not to stop me,
To settle me.
"You don't have to explain," she said. "Not to me." Silence hung between us, like sunlight through lace. I returned to my quarters. I picked up a fresh apron, laid it across my lap, and smoothed the fabric flat with careful hands. Not because I had to, not because a contract said so, but because somewhere between the panic in a stairwell and the stillness of a perfectly made bed, I had stopped being the man who built card houses in the wind. And I wasn't ready to go back. The mansion on the hill had its housekeeper, and the housekeeper, finally, quietly, had somewhere she belonged.